my one priority for the coming 3 years would be maintaining and building upon our core infrastructure. This is something that the city didn't put off, but didn't pay a lot of attention to in the late 80s and 90s, and we are making up for that now. And doing that in a responsible way, fiscally responsible way. And I think that is going to be very important to this community as we tackle some of the issues that you've heard mentioned in the introductions and some of the priorities here tonight. I think, quite frankly, some of the comments I've heard on some of the budget matters are, quite frankly, not responsible. This community has been very responsible. We have tried to maintain a very low budget rate, given all the challenges that we have. As you know, any community in this region, in this Commonwealth, and around this country has dealt with some real serious financial issues. And we are doing relatively very well. And we have come out of it in very good position to help build upon some of these core needs that we're going to need moving forward.
Infrastructure, infrastructure, infrastructure. During my previous tenure on council, I led the way in reducing borrowing and easing the long-term debt burden that the city has. But Paul is right. We have underinvested in infrastructure in several key areas that particularly affect here in the West End. I want to talk about a couple. As I've gone door to door, parents are panicked that their children will not be able to make it in the neighborhood school that they live in because of capacity concerns. We have to address education infrastructure, and we have to address it this next year. We have to address public safety infrastructure. On the West End, we are challenged with response times with fire and EMS, and we need to bring new infrastructure, whether it comes from redevelopment or taxpayer dollars, to ensure that our most basic obligation to our community to protect their safety is met. Additionally, we have one of the most basic infrastructure services of all our sewers. We have to invest in our sewers over the next few years to make sure that we are providing environmentally sustainable as well as sanitary sewer service to all of our citizens. And as a soccer dad, we need to make sure we supplement our recreation infrastructure around this city. It's far too inferior. Thank you.
Well, it's good to be back here at Hammond. I was here in 1964 and went off to Hammond, T.C. Williams, and graduated later. Education is a fundamental part of what I believe is important for the city. I was able to go from T.C. Williams to West Point to 36 years in the Army, where I learned a couple of things. I taught economics at West Point. I graduated from the Management College at the University of Chicago. I was a president of a school board. I was president of a university. In fact, I'm very proud of the fact that I'm endorsed by the teachers. But I've also been an economist that obviously understands numbers and loves to talk to people about it. I'm not afraid of talking budget. I'm not afraid of talking fiscal matters. But I'll tell you, my number one priority is resetting City Hall. And reset stands for restoring respect, making excellence the primary standard, service as our number one criteria, economy in all our actions and all our spending. With that, I'll measure my success by trust, which is restored between citizen and city council. Thank you.
Okay, thank you all very much. As I explained, now you can give them all a round of applause for this. Now, unfortunately, we have a great number of people willing and eager to serve Alexandria. So as I explained earlier, we have some important topics that we want to address, and yes, BRAC is among them, but we don't have the time for every candidate to answer each question. My suggestion to each of you is that if you are not given one of these questions to answer, if you haven't done so already, if you would like to make your position known on your website for that particular question, then everyone here will know that they can go there to measure your response to these questions that are being posed. But first of all, we're going to start with Mr. Smedberg, Mr. Wilson, and Mr. Wood with the issue of transportation. I thought it was very telling, as a reporter who covers Northern Virginia, that when Creed Deeds pulled off the upset and got the Democratic nomination for governor, there was only one member of his family who couldn't be there at his celebration that night, and that was the daughter who was stuck in traffic in Northern Virginia. So, you all know better than anyone, transportation is a big issue. So, gentlemen, as you all well know, the bus rapid transit proposal would build the 2 new lanes in the widened median on Beauregard Street, and general traffic would not be permitted on those lanes. Now, the good news It would allow for rush hour traffic where those buses or streetcars would move every 5 to 10 minutes each way to alleviate some of the rush hour traffic. The bad news, according to critics, you've got to take out all the trees on Beauregard Street to accommodate the median, and 18 hours of the day, those lanes will not be used. So the question to you three from the association and the sponsors, do you support the creation of a high-speed transit corridor to be built on Beauregard Street? We'll start with Mr. Spencer.
Well, I was co-chair of the task force that looked at the corridors around the city, not only here in the West End, it's Corridor C, as it's been called, but also A and B. And I do support the proposal. If there's one thing that I've heard ever since I've been on council, and Tim mentioned it tonight, is integrating our transportation plans and our small area plans, and bringing some clarity and building a foundation for having those plans move together in a coordinated fashion. I think we also have to be mindful of the fact that we live within a region, and we have neighbors that we can bring efficiencies to in terms of making sure that not only our residents, but people who work and visit our city can get here in an easy way. So there are a lot of very positive things, I think, about the transportation plan. I think there are things that we obviously have to do to help maybe bring a little bit more coordination and finality to some of the aspects of it. But I think there are things environmentally and other, that we can tweak and work on as it moves forward. But I think we've created a very good foundation for a plan to move forward.
During my previous tenure on City Council, I was proud to support the Transportation Master Plan that came out of a citizen-led group that called for a vision of 3 transit corridors, including Transit Corridor C here on the West End. I believe it is the right solution for bringing, for the first time, high-capacity transit on the West End of our city. The reality is, whether we develop any square inch of our city or not, there's going to be development occurring all around our borders that is going to acutely affect the West End and the entire city. And this is a way, bringing new transit to the West End, this is a way that we can help ease the burden of that traffic on our residents. And so I do support the Transit Corridor C. As a member of the Transportation Commission right now, representing the DASH Board of Directors, I supported it in that body, and I look forward to, as a member of council, making sure we bring that reality to fruition here in the city. So, thank you.
I think, once again, we have a problem of the cart and the horse being reversed. We have a BRAC small area plan that was approved without adequate transportation planning, without a plan that would allow us to understand the demand before we built the supply. In particular, that corridor doesn't plug into Van Dorn very well, by the way. Van Dorn all the way out to the metro is one direction, and Beauregard corridor to an ellipse, which is still causing great concern among the citizens. That corridor doesn't connect end to end. It has bus lanes, I agree. It moves public transit through an area where citizens needed to get to work, needed to get to their local jobs and their jobs downtown and elsewhere. But I do not think that the planning was done in concert with the development in a way that I think gave us credible, realistic solutions. It certainly did not satisfy the citizens.
Gentlemen, thank you. So now let's move on to Ms. Hughes, Mr. Krause, and Mr. Levain. Levain? Am I pronouncing that? And we're staying with transportation. As you all know, Arlington has approved the Columbia Pike corridor for transit changes. So the question is, what is your proposal for connecting to those areas, either by bus or by rail, and how would that, whether you support bus or rail, what would you propose for funding? We'll start with Ms. Hughes.
For funding, I would support tax increment financing. However, I do not, and I've been on the record before, support streetcar conversion for bus rapid transit. I believe that we do have to become more creative with the way that we're moving people around this town. I believe that people make a choice to live in Alexandria because Alexandria is unique. Alexandria is different, and our communities do not per se want a streetcar. That is not something that has been publicly vetted. Was just on the council dais last evening looking at a plan for 2040 for the region that mentioned streetcar conversion. My answer was no. $240 million for 1 mile of rail when you can build a metro station for that amount of money and then you have to add some other things on it. While it sounds great, we can't afford to do it. There's not been a substantial amount of public interest in doing it. bus rapid transit would be the way to go. So if people need to get off the streetcar and into a bus, so be it. This is Alexandria. We may not want the noise. It has not been determined that we do. Thank you. And not for that price.
First of all, let me just answer really quick on the corridor C question. I'm totally against it. I think developers need to pay for infrastructure improvements first, not taxpayers after the fact. I'm tired of this. This city has a spending addiction, and now they're talking about spending even more money. Money on streetcars, money for corridors that we won't be able to use. It doesn't make sense to me. Another thing I'm totally against is what the previous board, the current board just passed, is Delray Trolley. We had a dash bus, a free dash bus that served the Delray area. Nobody used it. I read one article, I believe it may have been in the past, about something like 20 people a day use that. It would have been cheaper to hand these people cab fare and pay for their dinners. We don't need more free buses. Paid by me and paid by you. Enough already, enough of the spending, please. Any new transportation needs to be paid for. Any new projects needs to be paid for. $2 of reduction in spending for every dollar in new spending. That's what I'm asking.
If you'll wait a moment, Mr. Levine, go ahead if you plan to respond. I need to get, I'm just the talking head, as you all know, I have no real power here. I need to get a ruling from the chair. Are you all, do you want to allow them to go back to other questions, or should they stick to the question that's posed to them and respond on their website to other ones? I know it's going to be tempting to do that, but it's going to be difficult. Excuse me? Okay. So the request is to try and stick to the question that's being posed to you. I know you have opinions on each of these issues, and we would like to hear them, but we're going to have to ask you to go to your website and do that, or we just will never get to all the questions tonight. But I thank you, Mr. Krause, and with that, Mr. Levine.
Well, I think the City Council picked the wrong option for Corridor C. They had an option before them. Arlington and Fairfax County are committed and are building a streetcar system that will extend from the Alexandria City line in Potomac Yard, up by the Pentagon, down the Columbia Pike, down the Skyline in Fairfax County. And they had the option before them to extend that streetcar onto the Nova campus, which desperately wanted to have it, down to the Mark Center, and down to the new Beauregard Town Center, and then to do rapid bus on the rest of the corridor. This would have required no or little additional right-of-way, and we would have had a connection to the region. Instead, the option they chose comes within half a mile of that regional streetcar system, but doesn't connect. So, you know, Alexandria is not an island. We have to start thinking like a region, especially when it comes to transportation. And streetcars, I'm sorry, but they have a higher ridership, they have environmental benefits, they have reduced economic development that helps to pay for them, their O&M costs are less, their DC's committed, Arlington and Fairfax, they're being pursued all around the world, and they deserve our consideration.
Thank you.